All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Environment and Agriculture Committee. First, I'd like to stand and have Representative Minor lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Well, I hope you all had a very relaxing 2 months. I know it was quite hot. I know I'd open the door and go outside and say, whatever you're baking, it's done. In any case, welcome back. And today we have ahead of us House Bill 396, which we've retained. It is an act exempting meat and meat food products slaughtered and prepared in state for sale in state from certain inspections. And so we have a work session on this, so we'll have some discussion. Before that, I do want to say that before we get started on that work session, I wanted to say that I got communication from Waste Management, Henry Vayu, who said that he is organizing for us a tour of the Turnkey landfill in Rochester on October 7th to meet there at 10 o'clock. And the tour would be about 2 to 2.5 hours, depending on how many questions we have for him. And so I hope that would be a suitable date for all of us to travel to Rochester to see their operations there. And I will talk to the Speaker's office to see if we can arrange for being able to claim mileage for that trip.
What's the date? What day is that?
October 7th is a Tuesday.
It's a Tuesday.
Okay. All right. So I will open the work session on House Bill 396, and I would like to have Representative Comtois give us an update on this since it's her bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thought long and hard about bringing an amendment for this bill, but I know it's an uphill battle for us here in the state because of the federal regulations. I'm frustrated beyond belief that the federal government is dragging their feet on this, although I understand that out in some discussions out west, the ranches out there do not want to see a Prime Act or anything like this because they want to keep the smaller farmers out of the business of being able to sell cuts. But here in New England, we're a lot different. And the Department of Agriculture has come out, because it is against the federal law, is afraid that if we pass anything in this state, then it is the farmers that will be penalized severely. Now, I know personally that just because something is stamped USDA does not mean that it is safe for eating. Unfortunately, I was a whistleblower for one of the facilities in the state of New Hampshire because they gave back some meat that was freezer burned. The farmer then returned it. The facility then turned around and put another farm's label on top of that label and sold it to them. So to say that our meat is safe and that we have to use USDA facilities to sell cuts of meat of amenable species in this state alone, and we were only talking about selling in state, is a disservice to every citizen of the state. Not only to the farmers, but also to the consumers who want good quality food and they want to know where their food is coming from. We passed a House resolution last year urging the federal government to do something to change the laws. But our hands are tied here in the state because of them. So I would ask this committee if they have any ideas or anybody that knows what we can do for this state, for our citizens, so that we can have good quality food and know where our food is coming from, whether it's meat, produce, whatever. I mean, we have been very active on this committee making sure everyone has access to good local food. But our stumbling block is when it comes to the amenable species. We can do non-amenable species, we can do rabbit, we can do poultry. But yet, a farmer can sell a half a pig or a quarter of a cow to somebody, and they can go and then they can have it cut up, but they cannot sell cuts of meat themselves at that same butcher shop. It doesn't make sense. So, if anybody has any ideas what we can do and how we can urge the federal government to do something for the small states.
What was the exemption, or there was some sort of rules that were different that the head of Farm Bureau, Ms. Brady, had discussed? She had some sort of list of something that I don't know, even if it's posted up anywhere, I don't know.
Is Rob here?
Yeah.
He may be able to answer that a little bit better than I. I know I don't want to misquote, but there was, and we did have those discussions. I know that Senator Innes and I sat on another committee, and along with Representative Bixby, discussing that also. But there are some things and some exemptions, but it's not what we're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Johnson, do you have this exemption that Ms. Brady was talking about? Oh, it's in the resolution? Can you come up to the microphone, please? Thank you, and good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Thank you. I've got the resolution right here. I can read it to you, but
Sure.
it reads that, and I'll start out between here. Urging the United States Department of Agriculture to adopt regulations allowing for small scale and very small slaughter plants to use the Federal Meat Inspection Act's custom exempt meat processing inspection criteria. And then it all goes on to seek a third party inspector present at slaughter, so we don't have to rely on the existing inspectors.
Mm-hmm. And was the president of Farm Bureau able to bring that to any kind of federal delegation or some sort of meeting or conference?
Yes, we've had discussions with two officers in particular. We've heard from Senator Shaheen's staff that they have received it, and then we've also had personal discussions, President Brady with Congresswoman Goodlander about it, and basically right now we're in the process of educating them. We had hoped to get the USDA secretary out to President Brady's operation, and we extended a formal invitation, and that was rejected.
And what is she doing that's different? President Brady.
Yeah, her and also we had invited the committee as well. As we just have to get that, but she is able to bring in meat that has been inspected, and then she's able to process it, to cut it up and sell it with her operation.
Representative Minor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. What is Commissioner Jasper's feelings on this particular subject?
Well, as far as I recall, when he testified, he was in support of the bill, but only, on the concept of the bill, but he was against passage of it because he was too afraid that of putting farmers at risk of being arrested, held charges, having their farm taken away from them, and so forth
From the federal
from
government?
the federal government.
Thank you.
I mean, this is sort of in the same issue or the same vein as legalizing marijuana. Whereas, we have a whole bunch of states now that are doing that. So there's sort of the federal government would be overwhelmed to prosecute everybody individually. But something like this is not to that extent. And I think it would be easier for the federal government to come down on somebody and take their farm away from them. Representative Potenza.
I just wanted to, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to kind of reiterate what she's saying. I think he was very supportive and loved listening to what everybody was saying, but it really all comes down to the heavy hand of the federal government at this point, and does not want to put anybody in that kind of position. And in making sure that unless things are changed at a top level, that we're still underneath that control, unfortunately.
Representative Bixby.
So one thing that Commissioner Jasper mentioned, and I don't know the details of how it works, but he said that it's possible to have an inspector come on a relatively intermittent schedule, and so that a custom shop could, in fact, arrange to have an inspector on certain days and do inspected slaughter on that basis. But I'm not sure what the what the overhead for doing that sort of program would be. Is that something that you know more about?
My understanding is that still require the inspector to come to a USDA inspected facility, which we only have 4 of. It wouldn't, the federal inspector couldn't come to a what we use a custom non-USDA facility in.
Follow up.
Go ahead, sure.
So, but I believe that there are some facilities that are USDA inspected custom facilities, which means that the facility is inspected, but the processing is not inspected as it's happening.
To my knowledge, there's only one of those, and that would be our president, Joyce Brady's operation fits that.
Thanks.
Representative Potenza.
I have a question actually for the both of you, for Barbara, Representative Comtois, and so during that hearing, we gathered some information, and then it was explored afterwards in regards with DHHS and an exemption piece. Is that something that we can still, I don't want to say a workaround, but in a sense, still be able to maybe cut into this level of control and still are we able to utilize that exemption? Do you know what I'm talking about? The woman that testified specifically about what she was able to do. Is there certain things that we can, in the meantime, it takes a long time on the federal side. Is that something that we can utilize to help some of these farmers in the meantime?
I don't believe so. I think we need federal action as Farm Bureau sees it.
Okay.
And we tried to put that in the resolution that there are 2 avenues.
Yeah.
It would be USDA rulemaking or legislation at the federal level.
Gotcha.
That was required.
Representative Comtois.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question for Mr. Johnson. When you talked about the President Brady being able to process, but she has to use USDA slaughtered meat, is that correct?
USDA inspected.
So it
Product,
still
yes.
involves the USDA.
Correct.
Thank you.
Representative Germana.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think it might be worth at some point more of a discussion with the commissioner, because Representative Bixby and I had an informal conversation with the commissioner about this, trying to see what we could do, and I completely agree with Representative Comtois that we need to exercise every possible option to try to help our farmers. And one of the things that the commissioner suggested was that with the slaughterhouses, part of the problem is that they need to rely upon a set schedule, a lot of those slaughterhouses, right? So they need to know that they're getting X number of animals to slaughter kind of each month throughout the year or whatever. And that with some of our smaller farmers, the issue has been that they bring animals to slaughter at an intermittent basis. And that this, he suggested, is part of the reason why it's more difficult. And he was suggesting that there's a certain amount of kind of educational component. I'm not suggesting that is the solution to this problem. That was something that came up with the conversation. He was suggesting that he thought that there was some barrier there that maybe we could move forward a little bit through kind of education of farmers in terms of thinking about the schedule of slaughter in terms of their the work with the slaughterhouses.
Representative Comtois.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just in response a little bit to what you had talked about a couple of years back, again, Representative Bixby and I sat on another committee discussing the same subject. I'm not beating a dead horse, but yes, I am.
We're not talking about horse meat.
No. We only have 4 USDA facilities in New Hampshire. These farmers have to schedule a year to 2 years out. They don't even know what's going to be born. And then if you are just starting out and trying to get in and trying to become a viable business, you're not going to be able to sell your meat. It's just not happening, because any established person is already booking every available slot that there is. So,
Do we know if any of our farmers are having to go out of state to
yes.
do this? Yeah. Do we know how many or what percentage or no?
That would be good. That would be a wonderful thing we could. Maybe we could ask the commissioner if he could put out to everyone that we know that is in this space or in this business and ask and find out if we could get those numbers. I think it would be helpful to know.
Is that something the Farm Bureau can pull numbers together? Or make some sort of conjecture or summary based on, data that you can get from your members?
We can reach out and
Yeah.
see if we can get an idea. If I could kind of address a little bit of what Representative Germana mentioned, he spoke to the seasonality issue, and that's a lot easier said than done, especially for smaller producers where, as you all know this, we rely on farmers rely on grass, and that grass is coming in starting in May, and it depends if you stockpile pastures and all, but certainly by November, if not earlier, it's out, and that's when your animals are, tend to be, you want to send them to market, when you don't have that grass. So I know with the commissioner, he's talked to me about it before as well, but again, it's just easier said than done with our the climate that we're in. It's not like we're out where there's year-round grazing in the southern part of the country.
Okay, Representative Comtois.
Yeah, just in speaking along the same lines, I think that a lot of the farmers that are now have learned how to, yes, they are looking at November as like the end date, or there's a certain time when you want to bring your the swine to market and things like that. But they're also looking at, they're doing it also on a monthly basis too, because they don't want to just only have a smaller season. So some of the people are actually doing it and scheduling things monthly at the same time, because they want to keep their customers in supply of meat. So that, and if you wouldn't have to book a year and a half to 2 years out if you could say, okay, November's the end, so I'll schedule in February. Well, they're still booked. Mm-hmm. So. Mm-hmm.
Well, Representative Minor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What, Representative, I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson, what Senator Shaheen and Representative Pappas feeling on this particular issue?
Well, I'd say they definitely want to be supportive, but it's as I see it, educating them on the issue and making it a priority for them too
So-
is something, especially coming from, there's some pretty big interest in other areas of the country when it comes to agriculture. For them to take the lead on this, I think is again, they need to be educated more and prioritized for them.
So am I to understand they're really not that interested at this point?
I don't think, no, I wouldn't characterize it that way. I think it's like I said, it's again, for them to take the lead on this type of an issue. They just need, again, I think they need to feel quite comfortable in doing so. And I don't think they're there.
Thank you.
Representative Scully.
Thank you. So this is really a question. Our resolution asked for basically a waiver, I guess, under the existing regulations, USDA regulations. If that was granted, would we still need to pass this bill in order for it to be legal in New Hampshire? Or does the exemption allow them to move forward without any action by the state of New Hampshire?
I think the exemption at the federal level is what is needed. So yes, no action is required at the state level.
So a parallel example of that.
Representative Bixby, you may speak.
Thank you. Sorry. out of practice. Right. So, a parallel example for that is the poultry exemption, which it exists whether or not the state has approved it. We in New Hampshire have approved the poultry exemption, basically reiterating what's stated in federal law. But even if a state doesn't provide that in state law, it still exists. And what the Prime Act basically would have done is create something similar to the poultry exemption, but for amenable mammal species, and in terms of what the hang up in Congress is for doing the Prime Act, part of that I think was that the original one tried to create the way it was phrased last term would have created a much larger carve out than was going to be able to. So, for instance, with poultry, you can only do 20,000 birds at the maximum, at the highest end of that. There wouldn't have been a cap for amenable mammals in the Prime Act as it was written before. I think that it's part of that is a matter of negotiation, but there are very large farms that don't believe that any farm that has fewer than 1,000 head is actually a farm, and those interests are not interested in having any sort of competition, whether from their neighbors in the west or from their neighbors in the east, and because those tend to be much more larger operations, they money speaks. So.
Representative Comtois, you had a...
Yeah, the only thing is we had discussed in our committee that if we did do something with this, that we would limit the number of animals per year or per month of each species, bringing forth an amendment to do that.
Senator Innes, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to find out the Senate perspective on this issue.
You can speak for the whole body.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
I didn't anticipate doing this today. So how can I help?
Well, I'm just interested to know the Senate perspective, or at least your perspective, since you're also a co-sponsor on this
Yeah.
bill. What your thoughts are on this.
Happy to address that. I guess for the record, Dan Ennis from District 7, resident of Bradford, and the co-owner of Trails End Acres, where we have 40 head of cattle now. And Howard Pearl, Senator Pearl, is also a co-sponsor on this bill. And I was pleased to see him on there because we've had a lot of discussions around this. But I think speaking for my Senate colleagues, pretty strong support for this across the board. Most of the senators, certainly on my side of the aisle, recognize the importance of small farms to our communities and the good food that they produce and sell in our state. And when you look at this, and I was talking with someone just a little bit earlier, and all this goes back, I think, to Upton Sinclair and his book in 1909 called The Jungle, which was about the atrocities, frankly, in the meatpacking industry back then. So we passed all these laws, based on conditions then that really don't apply today, where we have much more knowledge about infection and disease and so on, and how to mitigate that. And I think there's a view among the senators that sending an animal to a custom meat house and having it done there humanely, rather than shipping them to another state in many cases, that degrades the quality of the meat, tough on the animal, and it's hard to get in, and it adds significant expense to the process. And if you're doing, say, an animal a month, and you're shipping one animal to, let's say, Vermont every month, that's hundreds of dollars to get that animal there, which really cuts into the margins. And we all know farms in New Hampshire have very small margins. So, we're trying to find a workaround in our case, and we can do that. As was noted, you could sell a half or a quarter. You just can't cut it into pieces. And, there's a recognition of the folks on the Commerce Committee in particular that this is an issue and something that we hope we can address. And I guess I just want to ask something odd. Maybe nobody knows, but I'm sitting there thinking about it. We have all these issues around states' rights, right? Even marijuana, the government's letting us do that. If we were to pass this and implement it, what would the federal government do? I don't know. And would we have a significant case to make in terms of states' rights around this issue? And that just keeps coming back in my head. I don't know if it's a battle we want to fight, but
Judging from the comments from Commissioner Jasper, his concern again was that he didn't want to put our farmers in jeopardy of being prosecuted. And I mean, I'd be more than happy to pass this today, and let the chips fall where they may. But I'm not sure the commissioner would be a big fan of it because
No.
Certainly he doesn't want to see somebody's farm taken away from them.
And I appreciate that.
And
But you might
and
have
you
a
got
couple.
to appreciate that too.
You might have a couple farmers in the state who'd be willing to take the chance.
Oh yeah,
Just saying.
Representative Germana.
Yeah, and I, thank you very much, and thank you, Senator. I think one of the differences, for example, between marijuana, where we're seeing a lot of states obviously legalize it, even though it's not legal at the federal level, and what we're talking about is the unfortunate reality, right, that the big interests in agriculture are not going to be in favor of this kind of thing, right? So the pressure on the federal government to actually take action against our farmers, I think, is considerably higher than the possibility that they would take action on marijuana,
Yeah.
because that's the reality of the political reality, right?
Yeah, isn't that a shame?
Representative Potenza and then Minor.
Just thinking, what you said, Senator, if we do pass this and it is a owner, farmer beware, how can that hurt? They're taking the risk.
I appreciate that comment, and it's a risk I'd probably take just to see.
Representative Minor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Senator. Attorney General Formella, I think that's how you say his name. What is his read on it? Or perhaps he should come before the committee and give his input on this whole situation.
That's an excellent question, and I've not spoken with him about it, but that's not a bad idea. Yeah.
Representative Potenza.
So I have to say that if you look just over the last 4 years and the decisions that are coming out of the U.S. Supreme Court in regards with state rights, it's on our side.
It is. It is.
In the overreach, even if you look at just the U.S. Constitution compared to with New Hampshire, because our Constitution came first, it really is there is a pathway
Yes,
to
there
fight
is.
this.
Yeah. I agree. I agree.
Okay.
Representative Comtois.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Senator Ennis,
Yes, ma'am.
do you think that this should be rewritten with some limitations on the number of animals by a farmer that could be processed
Yeah.
at a custom meat shop? Do you think there should be any requirements on that custom meat shop? And thoughts of what they may be? And should we reintroduce a bill? Because this is all about intrastate
Yeah.
commerce. Because if we really think about what the federal government was originally formed, the reason it was formed was to protect our borders and to handle interstate commerce.
Right.
They were never supposed to be involved in intrastate commerce.
Correct.
And that's what we're talking about here.
Yes.
And if the citizens of the New Hampshire want, because, and as we've talked about, we're such a small community, one bad apple, I mean,
Right.
is going to be found out immediately. And even in our hearing, you would hear about which processors were not good and which ones were. So just a
It might be an
thought.
interesting way to try to thread the needle. I mean, if you think about the way we handle breweries in our state, right? We have certain limits, and if you fall below that, right, you've got a different set of rules. So it might make sense, and it might help mitigate some of the objections from the big companies. If I say, oh, it's just this little tiny piece, it might have a better chance. Yeah.
Any chance maybe that we could still draft an amendment? Because we have till the end of
I believe we have until November, don't
the
we?
end of November to pass a retained bill.
Absolutely.
There we go.
Representative Germana?
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the concerns that I had with the bill as written also that I would hope would be addressed if we're talking about an amendment is at line 8, number 2, the distribution to restaurants, hotels, boarding houses, grocery stores, and other establishments. I mean, one of my concerns is that, for example, let's talk about a bed and breakfast or a small hotel, right? And if they're getting relatively small cuts of meat from kind of different sources and different vendors, and there is an outbreak, there is a problem of some kind, tracking becomes extraordinarily difficult. It's quite easy with individual cuts of meat. That was a question I raised in our initial hearing. That continues to be a concern of mine. I'm sympathetic to the idea that we want to do something, I really am, but that particular part of this bill concerns me.
Representative Comtois?
Thank you, Madam Chair. That was also a concern when we did our rabbit and our poultry. And we've added a component to that, an education piece. UNH, I don't know if anyone is aware, is now offering a meat processing class. And I believe it's a certified, you get a certification.
We can require them to take that class.
So,
If I make maybe one more comment, and I'll go sit down. You know, I think we'd have a lot of support from good restaurants in the state. We want to work with Joe Farrow. He has 9 places, and we're trying to figure out a path to do that. He wants our stuff. He wants to point to a farm in New Hampshire and use that to market his restaurant. So if we can get support from people in that industry, that might really help us too.
Yep. Oh, Representative Minor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you again, Senator Ennis. I think a stipulation, because we also have a small farm, I think a stipulation would be to add to this amendment, or to this bill, that that the growers must have insurance, must carry insurance.
Yeah. Yeah,
I like that.
I like that. Representative Comtois?
so I'm going to play devil's advocate here.
All right.
we know that when we were trying to process certain other bills and things, that sometimes the insurance companies get tweaked out. And I don't know how we can't tell the insurance companies what they can and cannot cover.
Correct.
And so by mandating something like that, I think you're opening up a can of worms.
Possibly.
May I speak?
Yeah,
Can I
sure.
follow up? Thank you.
Representative
So
Minor.
I agree with what you're saying, Representative Contour, but also if you are a farmer in New Hampshire, it's very, very tough to get insurance. There's only, I think, 2 companies in the state of New Hampshire that provide farm coverage. That's a whole nother can of worms that we have to hopefully not open up, but we have to address.
I won't argue with you.
Representative Bixby.
I'd like to just follow up on the traceability, and I think that the amendment should have clear information in terms of making sure that any cut of meat has the origin, the slaughter date, the cutting up date, and essentially a full set of information in terms of the sourcing and processing of the meat. I think that is critical in order to make sure that it should also included in that should be something that says it is not allowable for sale outside of New Hampshire.
I would love to work with you on that, but I would look to the our rabbit and poultry laws and also our homestead laws where we have specific labeling requirements and things like that. So we have a lot of places to look at to grab data from too.
Representative Bixby.
Yeah. So and another the class that for rabbits and poultry is something that is actually under the food protection statutes in DHHS. So we might want to have their input in terms of what would be necessary for in terms of the education that's required on that end, because it may be different for amenable species that are non-bird amenable species as opposed to poultry.
Representative Scully.
Thank you. I just will voice a concern that I do not want an innocent party to be ground up by the government if they get put in the middle of this when we're telling them, we who should know better are saying, go right ahead and do this, when there's the possibility that an even bigger foot could come down on them if they're if they're found out and somebody decides to make an example of them. So I think that there are brave people out there, like Senator Innes sounds like he'd be a person who would be willing to be that test case. But I want to make sure that it's done with full disclosure. And I don't know if there's any way, if we decided to pass this law, that we could also put a footnote in there saying, oh, by the way, you still could run afoul of the federal government. So just to make sure that nobody gets hurt because we decided to make a philosophical stand when it might be at their expense.
No, I think people would have to know that, and certainly there's got to be some sort of full disclosure. You're at your own risk. Representative Potenza.
Yeah, I was wondering how that would look like. I would like a disclaimer, and I don't know what that looks like in regular legislation in our statutes, but basically saying that this is the position of the state of New Hampshire within New Hampshire. This doesn't include any action in regards that could be taken at your own risk with the federal government type of thing. So
Representative Minor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Of course, we always have the risk of the big foot coming down on top of us. But the question is, and as Senator Innes has said, I think there's some people that are willing to take that chance. I mean, things have to change. The food that's in our food chain It's basically it's terrible food. It's poisoning us. We have to depend more on local farmers, and something has to be done. And I think people are willing to take that chance.
Representative Comtois.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I thank everyone here for all their input on this. And I've had people coming up to me who, in the non-amenable species and in the rabbit and poultry world, saying we need better laws because we need to be able to expand. And I look at them, I said, you have no idea how good you have it, because all you need to do is look at the amenable species folks, where they have really nothing that they can go to. And so we have worked hard in this state for the non-amenable people, rabbit and poultry. And we need to work just as hard for the amenable species.
So, and maybe, if we could get the Senate to go along and pass it with an amendment, I mean, I'd be happy to support something, an amendment to go ahead and do that and let people know that it's at their own risk, and that maybe if somebody does get sued, it gets national attention, and they may do something federally to fix it. Finally, because sometimes a high profile lawsuit like that, federal lawsuit, gets things moving. It becomes a political issue. People are running on it, if they're running for office or whatever. And I think that would be, hey, why not? Representative Bixby.
Yeah, so another aspect of the rabbit and poultry is that people who are taking advantage of that that pathway to sell to restaurants need to be registered with the Department of Agriculture. We could make part of that registration with the Department of Agriculture for amenable species include a signed recognition that whatever the state law is, it doesn't protect you from the federal law.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions, comments about this particular legislation? Just go one.
In line 8 and 9, where it talks about the restaurants, hotels, boarding houses, I do have to say that I could name right now at least 5 restaurants where they love, they get all of their stuff either locally from New Hampshire or Vermont. They have a blackboard that they put up and they say where they got their hamburger from and where they got their produce from. And it's a real big deal, and people are willing to spend more for that. The farm to table is big. It has been, and we have not. I'm sorry, a little old New Hampshire should be capitalizing on that, and we have not.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, Representative Comtois, would you be willing to work on this amendment?
Yes, Madam Chair, and I would love the input of everybody on this committee and also Senator Innes.
Okay,
Thank you.
absolutely. All right, any other questions or comments? So we're not going to take a vote on this bill, this retained bill. We'll have, I will schedule probably another work session where we would consider an amendment to this and hopefully move this forward. Representative Bixby?
Yeah, so you might also check with the clerk to make sure that that the changes we'd be making would not fall within the to find out if we need to have another hearing on this for germaneness because of the amount that it's changing the bill. I hope that the clerk will say no, but because it seems germane to me, but I don't want to get to the end of the cycle and have him say, oh, you needed a non-germane hearing on this. So maybe check with him up front on this.
I will do that.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions, comments, or information for the good of the committee? You may, Senator Innes.
So interestingly, I'm messaging with Grant Bossy. about this situation. And he said, maybe we could expand the homestead foods to include frozen or refrigerated. Just keep it frozen or refrigerated. Maybe add a sell by date or something like that, give them the option. Not a bad idea. So, all right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right. And we thank you for your time, Senator Innes, to come and lend your comments and input. All right. With that, I would adjourn our meeting this, I didn't even bring my gavel today, huh? How do you like that? Adjourn this meeting, and we will reconvene as soon as I know a date. Thank you. All right. Yeah. So I don't know where there's